something. All right, turn to your neighbor and say, are you anxious? All right, just try it. Let me ask you a question. How many of you remember the storms on Tuesday? Do you remember when like the world was going to be destroyed and tornado was in Coffeyville and the news is, and it's coming towards us, and they say the dreaded words, it's coming towards Oswego, and you're like, oh man, where are my binoculars at, right? Now, let me ask you, how many of you are get in the tornado shelter kind of people? When that's happening, you're like, no, don't risk it, just get in the old shelter. Few of you, how many of you are where are my binoculars people? I got to go get in the garage and watch for this thing. All right. Yeah, you are either those two things if you're in Kansas, right? I was on the phone with a computer, like somebody, I was trying to diagnose a problem on my computer, and the lady's like, okay, now install this program, and I'm watching the news as I'm doing that, and I'm like, okay, now listen, man, she's talking, I was like, I don't mean to interrupt you, but they just said that a tornado is coming towards our town, and so, like, if I just disappear, just so you know what happened, right? And so she's like, okay, do you need to get off? And I was like, no, I'm in Kansas. This is what we do. Like, what was really funny is she put me on hold, and then Jenny came in the house and was like, we gotta go to the shelter. And I was like, okay. So I hung up on the lady, and can you picture her coming back? Sir, that's what you get for putting me on hold. There are kind of two people when it comes to tornadoes in Kansas, right? There's a third kind, the kind that moves to Canada. But all the rest of us, you either are going to the shelter and you do it, you grab your kids, you grab your dogs, your cats, you grab a picture, you grab everything you can to get into that shelter so everything will be safe with you. And then the other kind are like me, who loves to go to the garage, and you wish it's the time that you think about your neighbor's trees. Like, why won't they just cut down that tree, right? Because you can't see the storm, right? That's how people react to storms. But as I've been thinking about anxiety, I've thought there's really kind of two different types of people when it comes to anxiety. And the reality is, some of us are both of these people at different times in our lives. But when it comes to anxiety, there's two different kinds of people. There are the kind of people who are gripped by it. They're just gripped by anxiety. Maybe you know somebody like this, a loved one or coworker, that when they're expected to go into a room like this that's full of people, they get just so nervous. And they'll start getting sweaty. I've even known people who will say, I just can't do it. And they won't go into places where they're uncomfortable and they don't know people. You ever known somebody like that who gets gripped by anxiety? Maybe it's you. These are the people who, when your boss walks in and starts asking you about the project that's due and that is coming up, we got to get all this stuff lined out, they just get paralyzed with this fear, this anxiety, and they can't get anything done. I've been with people who, in kind of anxious moments like that, they can't even talk. Have you ever known somebody like that? They just are, like, they want to, they know they should be saying something, but they're so overwhelmed by all the fear and all the anxious thoughts that they can't stop. There are people who are just, frankly, gripped by anxiety. And these are the people who are kind of when that storm of anxiety comes up, they're the shelter kind of people. They need shelter. They need a place to go and hide. They need to get away. And this is why so many of us who don't struggle with that don't understand it. Because we'll say things like, just get over it, or I don't know why this is such a big deal for you, and we don't understand it, and these people need to be in the shelter, and you're like, but where's my binoculars? That's what I care about, because if you're that person who maybe doesn't get anxiety or doesn't struggle with it very much, you're the person who maybe is just affected by it. And I don't mean affected as in you have it, but as in that you deal with people in your sphere of influence who are loved ones who have anxiety, and it affects the way that you have to deal with life and how you're going to deal with them. And so there's kind of these two spectrums that we all deal with. There's two types of people. There's also Canadians, but we're not going to talk about them. But there's kind of two types of people when it comes to anxiety. Here's what I want to start off with, because you need to know this about anxiety. Anxiety is a natural thing. It's actually a God-given thing. Anxiety is a God-given response to create a heightened state of alertness in dangerous or fearful situations. So, let's say little Billy, your son, who is 4 years old, has started climbing up in the tree, and you hear his voice from afar, and he says, Mama, come look at me! And you go over, and Billy is 40 feet up in the tree, and he's like still going higher. Some of you know you get the anxiety going, right? Your heart starts palpitating, and you're like, could I catch him? And you're doing this thing, like, if he falls, I'm going to get, like, you're calculating the ping pong ball thing of him hitting branches, and how am I going to catch the kid? That creates natural God-given anxiety. It actually causes your heart rate to go up. It causes your body to release some adrenaline, and that's a good thing. God put that in you so that you could deal with situations that need your heightened attention. Anxiety isn't a bad thing all the time. Some of you have felt this when, I know nobody in here because we're in a church, but you have friends who've done this. They've been driving through a town, 20 or 30 miles an hour faster than they should be, right? None of you, right? Nobody in here has ever done it? Yeah, okay. But they're driving, and then there's that magical, like magic circus show of lights that start sometimes when you're driving too fast, and the lights come behind you, and they come up, and you see them, and what happens to you, man? You are just like, everything, your heart starts beating 1,000,000 miles an hour, and you're like, if you're like me, you start looking for all your papers, and you're thinking, I hope they don't think I'm looking for a gun or something, right? Or like hiding your pot or something. Like that, I'm always thinking, like, I hope they don't think I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing. And by the time they get up there, you're like crying, like, I'm sorry, I didn't know. And they're like, you knew, and you get it. Never happened to me, all right? But you can imagine that it happens to some people, right? That is a natural type of anxiety for people to have. You have probably all experienced this. You ever had the boss walk up to you and say, hey, we need to have a meeting this afternoon. And then they walk off. And you're like, about what? Right? And you start going through every single thing that it could possibly be. And when you get in there, it turns out it was just, we're getting new insurance policies and we need to go over this. But man, a boss asking to have a meeting with you can produce incredible anxiety. If you're a boss and you want to mess with your people, just ask them for a meeting in the afternoon, but do it like first thing in the morning, all right? That'll freak them out, all right? Just be sure to give them like a Lunchable or something. I don't know what you can do, some candy or chocolate. Anxiety is a natural God-given response. It is there so that you can deal with situations that are fearful, that need you to be alert, that need you to have that heightened awareness. Here's the problem for us. The problem is this, that for some of us, our brains have a disproportionate response to the inputs that we experience. Now, that's a big sentence. Let's break it down real quick. Our brains, this thing up here, have a disproportionate response. Like, it's too big. Our response is too big for the input that we're experiencing, the thing that we're involved in right now. And if you are an anxious person, you get this. This is what I've learned by just asking people and studying this week, is that people who deal with anxiety, they don't need you to tell them that their response is improportionate. They get it already. They know that they're not reacting reasonably to the situation, but they cannot help it. This can lead to excessive nervousness, fear, apprehension, and worry. Listen, our world is incredibly anxious right now. Incredibly anxious right now. These kind of disproportionate responses, I'll just be blatantly honest with you about this. I have been in elders meetings here, and our elders meetings are so good. We laugh all the time. We have such fantastic leaders. But there will be times where somebody will say, hey, Kent, I talked to this person, they were kind of upset about something. Now, what you have to know is in my past, I worked under some elders at one point who, when somebody complained about something, the elders would jump down my throat about it. And they would say, you must not be doing a good job. And they would tell me how bad I was, essentially. And so in my heart, whenever somebody starts out a conversation, because as a pastor, you have like hundreds of people who kind of perceive themselves to be your boss, right? Like, that's a weird thing that everybody in here, if you give money, you might think, well, we get something for that. So there's this weird tug and pull as a pastor. And I would be in these situations, and these past elders that I'd had at a different church, they would just light me up for it without me being able to even respond, without me being able to talk to anybody about what had happened. I hadn't even been able to address the issue with the people who were upset. And so here, when I first started, and the elders would say, hey, Kemp, somebody brought up an issue with us, and I'm going to just tell you guys right now, I would be sitting in that meeting trying to look like I was like as cool as a cucumber. You know, I'd be like, yeah, okay. And I'd be doing this thing like sliding around because I would start to get uncomfortable. And you know what would happen? As they would be talking about it, my heart would be beating like out of my chest. I don't even know if the guys know that. I would talk and I could feel my voice start to tremble a little bit. You ever had that happen where you're like, do I sound like a wimp right now because my voice is trembling and because I'm trying to hold it in, and then you like turn into Barney Fife or something. And I'm like sure, baby. And I'm sitting there and I'm trying to. And here's what I love about our elders. They would always go, yeah, I talked to him and I handled it, and it's no big deal. But do you know what was happening to me? Because our elders are such good men. They would deal with it. Some of you maybe talk to them about things that you didn't like about me. That's okay. You don't need to like me. You need to like Jesus. But I love that these men would protect me and guard me, but I hadn't had that before. And so what happens? I had built up in my brain a disproportionate response to the input I was experiencing. Because I was expecting something else. In my brain, my subconscious brain was expecting something else. Have you ever had that happen? Some of you, the reason why you're afraid to walk into rooms that are large is because at some point you got embarrassed. You were at a 7th grade dance and you asked some girl to dance and she wouldn't do it and everybody saw you and laughed at you. And ever since then, when you go into a big room, you're a 7th grade boy. Like, I don't want to ask anybody to dance, right? That's just kind of how we are when we walk into these situations. Some of you, there are situations that over and over again have produced anger or fear inside of you, and you just have a disproportionate response to that input. You get it? If you don't have anxiety, if you're not somebody who's gripped by anxiety, you don't get this. But if you are gripped by anxiety, you know just how desperate it can feel and how hopeless it can feel to have this anxiety ripping you. Now, if you're not gripped by anxiety, but you're affected by it, then you may not understand this at all. Actually, studies would show that if you're probably much above 40 years old, that anxiety is not a huge issue for you, right? You may be going, I worry about stuff, but it's not like a constant fear for me. What's really interesting is I was researching this, is that they said that the younger that people get, the more, right now in our world, the more anxiety they're experiencing. As a matter of fact, right now, the millennials, which are not like the teenagers, you might think they're teenagers, but they're really like 21 to maybe 30-something are the millennials. Those people are experiencing incredible amounts of anxiety, like more than any other generation before them. The problem is that Generation Y, that generation, the next generation, so like our youth pastor John is the kind of cutoff for the top end of that age, and down to like 15-year-olds, teenagers, that generation is experiencing more anxiety than any other generation ever. This means if you have kids and you think anxiety is an issue for you, your kids are going to have it to the nth degree. I wrote down, let me see if I can find the facts. There is 91% of Gen Z is stressed out right now. 91% of them. These are the kids that are in high school, that are graduating, going to college. 91% of them are feeling incredible stress. Like, I don't know what to do with my life. This is another one that was really interesting to me. 37% of them are going to get counseling in the next year. Now, I'm not going to ask you, but if I did ask you how many of you have ever had counseling, probably we'd have very few of you who would raise your hands, right? There's something, yeah, it's okay. It's not a bad thing. I'm going to share in a moment that I went through counseling. It's not a bad thing, but what I've learned from researching anxiety is that very few of us are very good at dealing with it. There are so many people who are dealing with it. And either as those who are gripped by it or those who are affected by it, we don't know how to deal with it. And the problem is, this is not going to go away. It's just going to get worse. It's just going to get worse. And some of you who have little kids know this. And so I want to give you just real quickly kind of 3 things that we need to all think about for those who struggle with anxiety. And then we're going to wrap this sermon up. But hopefully it's kind of a quick sermon, all right? So here we go, the first one. And then I do want to say this. You can read that. It's okay. Don't worry. You can put it up, Alex. That was my fault. Listen, here's the other thing. For those of you who are affected by anxiety, it's maybe not something you struggle with personally, but you know somebody. I'm going to put on Facebook later today a couple things that you can do, a couple tips on how to be better at handling anxious moments with people who struggle with anxiety, okay? So be sure to check that out. If you struggle with anxiety, I would get on and listen to that and share it with other people if you would. But this is the first tip that I just want you to know. You are not alone. If you're gripped by anxiety right now, if even just being in this room makes you anxious, being in situations where you're uncomfortable, if there's moments in your life where all you can do is just want to shake, if there's moments in your life where you can't even get out of bed because there are fears that are overwhelming to you, you need to know you're not alone. There are over 40 million Americans right now who have serious anxiety disorders. It is going to be an epidemic in our country if it's not already. It's just on the rise. I heard a statistic about colleges. I wish I could remember the exact statistic, but they were talking about how colleges right now are struggling to add enough counselors to their college base because so many students are seeking mental health counseling at college. Can I tell you a secret? I didn't even know colleges had counselors until I heard that statistic, right? I didn't go to one. I didn't know about it. Not that I didn't need to or whatever, but it is becoming an overwhelming problem. So I was thinking about why. Why is it that I think it's like, it's in the low percentage, like 12%, 13% or something of adults who I think it's like 60 and over have anxiety issues at all. You guys are like the happy-go-lucky. And if you're 70 or over, you're like hardly any of you have anxiety, right? You guys are like, woo, we're just going to live life and it's going to be great. And now I could be wrong. You can come up later and tell me I'm wrong. You probably will. That's fine. Write me a letter or something. But there are these people, the younger you go, the more anxiety they have. And this is, I've researched this, some of you have just extraordinary situations that have led to your anxiety, and that is reasonable, okay? You don't need to feel guilty. Nobody needs to feel guilty about it. But some of us, I think the problem is that we don't have time to be bored as Americans anymore. I was in the doctor's office the other day, and you know how they love to have you wait outside? They bring you in to give you that like glimmer of hope, like I'm going to see him. And then they put you in the other waiting room where you're by yourself. It's like solitary confinement in there. And I'm in there for literally like 2 seconds. And I'd said before I went in there, I'm just not going to get on my phone or anything. 2 seconds in, and I'm like, all right, I'm just getting on my phone, right? Because I can't be bored anymore. I was watching a movie the other day. The movie got boring for 1 minute, I would say, tops 1 minute. You know what I did? Without even thinking about it, I pulled out my phone and I just started going like this. I couldn't be bored. And here's the problem with not being bored anymore. Here's the problem with it. Younger Americans are constantly evaluating their outer worlds and giving little to no attention to their inner worlds. There is no time for kind of an angst inside of you that you deal with it. Because I've got to think about how I'm going to look on Snapchat and how it's going to look on Facebook and how it's going to look on Instagram. When I was a youth pastor, I was doing youth ministry in the transition time period between all the social media and not having it. I remember when it went from flip phones to like iPhones and that kind of transition. And I remember there was this transition that nobody else was talking about, but that I saw in teenagers where high schoolers went from looking like goofy kids who didn't know how to dress themselves to really sophisticated college students. You remember that period of time? Maybe you didn't. It's not as prevalent, I don't think, in small towns, but when you go to big cities, if you ever maybe you have a nephew or something that's a high schooler, and you think, that kid seems like he's a college student, but he's a freshman in high school. You know what's causing that? All they're thinking about is their outer world. How do I appear to everyone else? I saw a girl in our youth group in this church a few years back when our youth pastor Jake left and I took over that for a period of time. I became friends on Snapchat with a bunch of them, and one of the girls sent a video of another girl who went to our youth group picking her nose in class, like this. You ever do like the sneaky pick, like nobody's going to know they're in, right? Can you imagine if every moment of your high school existence was being recorded and sent out to every single one of your friends? How much anxiety would you have had? How much stress would you have had? You know what it would force you to do? You would focus all of your energy on your outer world. And you would give no attention to your inner world. You would give no attention to your heart. Your heart, it's the center of everything when it comes to your relationship with Jesus. So the first thing I would say to you is that you're not alone. There are tons of people stressing about this. And if it's not on your radar, you need to get it on your radar. The second thing is this: it's okay to not be okay. And I want to be, some of you maybe are thinking, Kit, where's the scripture in this? I'm going to get to lots of scripture in a moment, okay? So don't tune me out. But I need to set all this up. It's not okay. It's okay to be not okay. When in 2011, my dad passed away real suddenly, and I went to see a Christian counselor at that point. I will also, this is my little plug for Christian counselors. If you have ever gone to see a counselor, there's a big difference between somebody who's just giving you psychology and somebody who's giving you psychology through the lens of theology. It's important to find somebody who's a Christian counselor who understands the world of who Jesus is and God and how he works. And so I went to see one because I was just messed up. And so I'm sitting there with this Christian counselor and I'm telling him how do I get up in front of people and preach this Sunday? Because I feel like just telling them the world is horrible, everything stinks, and just everybody should go home. And he was like, so why do you feel like you can't say that?
I said, I don't know, because I didn't want everybody to be crying and sad.
And he said, who's got a gun to your head, Kent? I said, what do you mean? No, nobody. He said, no, who's putting all this pressure on you that it's not okay to just not be okay? And I was quiet for a while. You ever had somebody ask you a question and you're like, ooh, how do I? And I finally said, I guess me. I guess I'm not okay with me not being okay. And he said, you know what? One of the most healthy things you could probably do is get up in front of your congregation and say, I'm really messed up right now. And I actually, for that time period, it's the only time I've ever done this, I used somebody else's sermons. And I told our church, I said, I'm going to preach somebody else's sermon so you still get some hope in your life. Because otherwise it will be desperate. I said, I'm just not okay right now. And I need you to know that it's okay to not be okay. I actually had a lady, she's a lady, who messaged me just recently and said, when you said that, it was one of the most life-altering things for me to hear in church. That it's okay not for you to stand up there and say, as a pastor, I'm really messed up right now and I don't have it together. If you have anxiety and you struggle, you need to know it's okay to not be okay. The third thing that I want to say to you before we get into kind of what do you do is this. There is hope to recover from anxiety. You don't have to feel hopeless. You don't have to feel desperate like you're always going to have this. I'm not saying, I don't even know if in this life Jesus will give you the freedom from it. But what I know about him is he will give you freedom. And you should hold on. You should hold on because this is what the scripture says. 2 Corinthians 4, 16 through 17 says this, therefore we do not lose heart. We don't lose heart. We don't give up. We don't lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away. Some of you with anxiety know what it's like to just feel like you're wasting away, like you have no control over this. Yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day, for our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. What you are going through right now, I know it feels big, I know it feels weighty, but what Paul is reminding you and I of is that it's just a little thing compared to what God is preparing for you. He says this, so we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. That's that's the answer. How do you deal with your anxiety? How do you get past it? How do you make it something that you can manage and live with? How do you find hope in it? How do you do that? You do it by looking at not what is seen, but what is unseen. Because what's seen is temporary. What's seen is going to pass away. All of the stuff around you, these pews, even the people around you, all of the stuff that's around you, someday it's going to be gone. And all you're going to have left is what's unseen. And so this morning I was thinking, how do I preach that? This is the part where we're going to take a little turn. All right, Chris, you can come up if you want. We're going to take a little turn. I'm going to ask you guys turn the lights down in here. Because I want to do something. I was thinking, how do I preach this for people who are really anxious and have anxiety issues? And how do I not have it just feel like another sermon where it's like Kent just is up there saying, well, just get better. Just get over it. It's not that big of a deal. How do I change that type of sermon into something different that maybe is actually helpful for you? And so I wanted to try something different. See, I studied a tremendous amount of scripture this week because the scripture is just rich with material for those who are anxious. Super rich with it. It's full of it. And I was thinking, how do I take all of this and give it to you in a way that is something that's actually helpful? And so this is what I did. I took all those scriptures and I wrote them as though they are a letter from God to you. I put them kind of in Kent's words. And what I'm going to do is at the end of the service today, we're going to actually give you all a copy of this letter. And what my hope is that you'll take the letter. And when you're in the midst of an anxious moment, life just, everything's spinning out of control, that you'll maybe just figure out a way to take a break and to step back and read the letter. And the letter that you're going to get, I'm not going to read the scriptures today. Some of you who are really familiar with scripture, you'll hear it in there. But in the letter, it actually has in the footnotes the actual text from the scripture, so you could actually read scriptures. But my goal was to give you a tool that you could take with you, and when you're heading into a moment that will make you anxious, or you know that you're in the midst of an anxious moment, that you can push pause, you can say time out, and you can step back and you could read this letter and let your Abba, your God, your Father, your Daddy speak into your life once more. And for you to be able to slow down, because why? Because we need to fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. And so I wanted to give you a tool that would help you fix your eyes. So I'm going to ask you to do something a little strange for church. This may feel a little weird for you, but this is what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm prefacing it with that. Is I'm going to ask you to just close your eyes and bow your head. Don't fall asleep, all right? And I want you to listen to this. I'm going to read it to you. And I want you to hear it as though it's a daddy, a father. And not your dad, if he was not a good guy. I've said this before. My dad was an amazing man. So if you need a dad to picture, I know you didn't know him, but you can picture him. Maybe find a guy that you know who is a good dad and picture him. But to find a dad who's a good dad, who's the kind of dad that you wish you had had. And picture that person reading this to you, because my hope is that you will hear the heart of God like I heard it through the scripture this week. Bow your heads, close your eyes, and listen to this. Dear beloved, I know the crushing thoughts that pervade your heart. I hear the waves of anxious thinking that bombard your mind. I need you to know I've looked you over, and I know your heart of hearts. I know all the good and all the dastardly, all the hidden things you want no one to know. And I need you to know I'm here, not going anywhere. I'm here to lead you into a way that is everlasting, a way of hope, life, and peace. Let that word peace hang in the air for a moment. It is yours. It's what I offer. It is the peace that comes when you finally come to the end of yourself. When you finally realize your utter inability to control anything. It is a peace that comes when you recognize in deep conversation with me that I am utterly in control. You will know you are getting there when your mind shifts from fixating on everything you wish you were to every good thing you've already been given. Listen to me, dear one. I'm not done with you. Your anxious mind wants to try and figure out a way through. It wants to bring control to what feels out of control. I'm inviting you to embrace your lack of control. I'm inviting you to the shelter I long to provide for you, my peace. It is a peace that will shock and amaze those around you. It surpasses and transcends what the world can understand. My peace is a guard for the deepest recesses of your heart and mind. Embrace it even when it feels impossible to make sense. I am a caregiver by nature, a nurturer of the broken, the gentle hand that restores. You are bent, I won't break you. Your spark smolders, I will not snuff you out. I will walk alongside at the pace you can bear, because you're what I'm after. You worry about so many things. I need you to know I see the constant whirlpool of shame, blame, guilt, and inadequacy. Do you still not know me? Do you not know I see what no one else sees? I look past the outside of the cup to what is within. I look past the frenetic. I look past your sense of inferiority. I look past all of what occupies your mind to the part of you that looks like a child, looks for an Abba, a daddy. I see your heart, and I like what I see. There are a few things I need you to know. The waters will rise, yet I am still with you. You may feel as though the raging rivers will sweep you away, but I will not allow it to take you. You may walk through red-hot coals in this life. I will keep you from being burned. You will not be set afire. I am with you. Don't you know my name? I am the warrior-hearted one. I have a fierce love for those I love. I know fighting, and I am on your side. Let me take up your cause. You can relax in me. I am your salvation. Can I tell you a deep secret? One I wrote long ago. Leaning close, let me whisper my truth to your deepest longings. Take great delight in you. I see you, and I delight in you. I know the enemy has filled your mind with lies and half-truths, but I know nothing of them because I did not create them. They are a horrible fiction that has hidden my truth. You are my treasure, my love, my child. I long to sing over you in joy. I know it feels like there are so many things to fix, so many things to worry about, so many things that if you don't engage them will fall off the face of this earth. That is not my truth. My truth is that I can take care of it. For fun, I spend my days dressing the flowers, feeding the birds, capping the mountains with white, and stirring the oceans. How much more do you think you are worth to me? Stop. Don't answer. I already have. You are worth everything. My very life. put on the line to bring you back into my presence. And get this, I did all that while you were at your absolute worst. So what makes you think I can't handle what you feel you are now? Let me close with this. Hard days are in front of you. Unimaginable pain. Inscrutable distress. Don't lose heart, my dear one. I am the overcomer. I've overcome the stronghold of sin. I've overcome your dead heart, shocked it back to life. I've overcome the greatest enemy of all, death. So when I say this, believe it, I have a special book, a journal of sorts. In it, I record the names of those who are mine. It is my family reunion list. And dear one, you are on it. I have a special compassion on you because you are my special child, whom I love dearly. Rest in that. With deep love, your Abba, Daddy. You guys can open your eyes if you want. This morning, in a moment at offering time, we're going to give that letter to you. But I wanted you to hear it. And I wanted you to hear it read with compassion to you. Because some of you, you need to start the day with these scriptures like Malachi 3, 16 through 17 that talks about God having a scroll that he's written your name on. And that he looks at it. He treasures you. You need to take like Romans 5, 8, where like God talks about how your sinfulness, and while you were still a sinner, he died for you. You need to take these scriptures, and every single day you need to put them into your heart and mind to remind you that just because you don't have control doesn't mean that God doesn't. Doesn't mean that he's not there. Some of us need just help setting our eyes on what is unseen. Taking our eyes off of what's seen. Taking our eyes off of all of the distress, all of the outer world, and putting our eyes not on the inner world of ourselves, but on the inner world where God can actually transform and change you. This morning, I want to pray in a moment, and I'm going to pray for those of you who maybe struggle with anxiety, and then we're going to sing a song of invitation. And during that time, I just want you to spend some time thinking about your relationship with Jesus. Because some of you, this is what really breaks my heart, is some of you are trying to go through this life dealing with all the anxieties and all the stress and all the troubles apart from Jesus. You're trying to do it apart from the one who came to actually give you a freedom and to give you a hope. You're trying to do it apart from the one who says that he can give you a peace that surpasses all understanding. He does that, he does that by you turning your heart and your mind towards him, that you would bring everything to him with prayer. And as you do that, your anxious thoughts start to relieve themselves as you bring prayer and thanksgiving before God. As you turn your mind to the unseen, all of a sudden he can take control of what you feel like is uncontrollable. So this morning, maybe you need to make a decision or you need prayer. And so after I pray, I'm going to invite those of you during the song who need that to come forward. And what our elders talked about this week that we're going to start doing is our elders are going to come forward too. And if somebody needs prayer, this is not just the time for those of you who need to make a decision for Jesus. Maybe you just struggle with anxiety, or maybe it's not even something Kent preached on. Maybe it's like, I just found out that I have this cancer or this health concern or whatever, and I just need somebody to pray for. Our elders want to be up here to pray over you for that. So if you need to come forward and find some prayer with somebody, this is your time, this invitation time. And I would just ask with as much heartfelt sincerity as I can that you don't miss this opportunity to let these men pray over you and bless your life with their prayer. Will you guys bow your heads and pray with me?